Have you ever looked in a cookbook and tried to find recipes for only 2 people? Well, it's a lot more difficult than you might think. Not everyone has an army of kids in the household or a lot of room in their freezers to store food. So what I thought we would do is take a look at recipes for 2 that are big on flavor. We're even going to take an ordinary recipe and whittle it down and make it perfect for a duo. Hey, if you love to cook, you know that a well-stocked kitchen is a convenient kitchen. You know, what I like to do is have some basic fundamentals, some essentials at hand all the time. So when I bring in things fresh from the garden or from the farmer's market, I can integrate them into some of these basic things. Let me just go through a few of them with you. When I cook, I love to have organic vegetable stock or chicken stock. Also dried beans. I love lentils, some canned tomatoes on hand, as well as roasted red peppers. And then, of course, pasta, little angel hair pasta, a little spaghetti, and then couscous. Easy to make. Also, I like to have some olives, peppercorns, of course, and sea salt. I love sea salt. And olive oil. You need a good olive oil for salad dressings. You can have a basic olive oil for cooking. And oh yeah, you want to make sure you have some good vinegar around. Again, I love to make my own salad dressings. Now let's take a look at the refrigerator. So you can see I've got a few things set out here. Of course, we have our own eggs here at the farm, so you always need to keep some eggs. But I also like to have some cheese in the way of aged cheese. It could be Parmesan or Asiago. I really like Asiago. And also some goat cheese, great for salads and things like that. Yogurt, also some whipping cream, and then soy milk, some real butter. Yep, real butter. And a pre-made pie crust. If you got to throw a pie together in a hurry, having these around, it's really handy. All these things have a much longer shelf life than you might expect. Now, speaking of long shelf life, let's take a look at the freezer. You know, I love to keep fresh berries on hand that are frozen because you can make things very quickly with them. Of course, I like to keep some sorbet. It's handy for desserts. And also, if I find meat on sale, it's a really good price, I'll keep it in the freezer until I'm ready to use it. And then of course there are a few basic things from produce and the bakery in the way of some lemons and limes and a loaf of fresh bread. When it comes to spices or flavorings, well, you know, just look at my spice drawer. I have lots of things, but you really need some cayenne pepper, I think some onion powder, some cinnamon certainly, and also honey. It's great to have around. Of course, you're going to have some of the fundamentals in the way of cooking oil, flour, and sugar. But these other things, when you've got them on hand, you're bringing some fresh things in from the garden, or like I said, the farmer's market, there's so many combinations you can come up with. In fact, let me show you one of them. Hey, who doesn't love grilled cheese sandwiches? I loved them as a kid. Every kid I know loves them. You probably love them. But I've got an adult version here that adds a few vegetables that maybe kids wouldn't like, and I want to share that recipe with you. You see, it involves tomatoes. And growing your own tomatoes is easier than you think. If there are just 2 of you and you have a small space, you can easily grow tomatoes in containers. Now you need to understand that determinate tomatoes stay compact and produce an abundance of fruit for a determined period of time. They're great for containers because they don't grow as tall as indeterminate tomatoes. You just need to decide what type you want or need. There are tomatoes for slicing, for making paste, and cherry tomatoes for salads. For instance, Husky Red was developed especially for the home garden. Now what makes this hybrid so great is the vines are short and husky, up to about 4 feet tall. They yield lots of tasty fruit in a small space over a long period of time. So if you're a salad eater and you enjoy fresh cherry tomatoes all summer long, check out Husky Cherry Red. And I love to use these little cherry tomatoes to garnish, well, the grilled cheese, along with a few basil leaves. All right, Now that you know how to choose the best tomatoes for two, let's talk about a delicious grilled cheese sandwich for two. Now this is the way I go about it. I start with a non-stick skillet and turn it on medium heat. Then take some whole wheat bread and butter one side with a light butter. Now do this times 2 and place it in the skillet. Next, add 1 slice of American cheese. Now for the adult portion of the sandwich, the vegetables. Add some avocado and tomato and some coarsely chopped basil. Then on top of that, add a touch of garlic salt, a touch of red pepper. Then simply cover this beautiful ensemble with 1 slice of mozzarella and 1 slice of provolone cheese. Cap it with the bread and make sure you've got butter on the top of the wheat bread. This is a simple grilled cheese recipe that, well, can come right out of the garden. A delicious recipe you don't need to cut down because it freezes beautifully.
I'm Mark Abernathy. I'm a restaurateur and executive chef. I've been at it for over 40 years. Love what I do. What's not to love? This is a fresh herb cheese and egg tart. And it's great because you can customize it kind of, well, let's try this, let's try that. I went with basil as the primary herb. A little bit of globe basil and a little bit of good old sweet basil, which you can find most everywhere. But then I threw in some chives and some sage to go with it and a little bit of parsley, but you can customize it. Now some things wouldn't work. I don't know that rosemary would work because it might be overpowering, but maybe a little different type of basil. Mint wouldn't work. So, you know, it's fun. You can kind of customize and see what works, what doesn't work. But the herbs really shine through, and it's a good palette for that. You're going to start off, we're going to take a tablespoon of butter in a skillet. We're going to kind of melt that butter down, then we're going to add this diced country ham, and the butter will mix with that ham and start to caramelize and then start to bring out a little bit of fat in the ham because it's basically lean in its own right. So that's going to start to brown, and we'll cook that for 3 or 4 minutes, and it'll start to pop and start to brown a little bit, and then we're going to add about 3 tablespoons of finely diced shallots. And we'll mix that in and let that cook for maybe another couple of minutes and let all that meld together. Then I'm going to turn the fire off and let it just sit and kind of cook together for a while. Now we're going to move into an egg mixture, and what I'm going to do here, depending on the size of the eggs, about 3 whole eggs, and I'm going to add a couple of egg yolks in there too, so give a little bit of extra fat in there. And then I'm going to mix those up, just hand beat those eggs, and then to those eggs, I'm going to add, about 4 or 5 strips of crisp bacon that I've chopped and crumbled. Then I'm going to add a cup of finely shredded sharp cheddar cheese. I like the sharp. 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream. We'll mix all that together, a liberal shot of sea salt in there and some fresh ground pepper. This is a really good candidate for a store-bought pie crust. Pre-bake your tart shell. Put a little nonstick on your tart pan, lay that out there, pinch the edges around nice, and then lay some parchment paper on top of it. Put some weight on top of the parchment paper, and that keeps the crust from popping up and bubbling up and getting uneven when you bake it. And you want to bake it, I don't know, for about 8 minutes or so with the weights on there. Then take them off, and it'll be set. It won't pop up after that, and you can bake it the rest of the way for another 5 or 6 minutes till it turns a little golden. Now I'm going to take the shallots and the ham and I'm going to spread it on the bottom of that tart. So it's going to give you a layer of ham and shallots on the bottom. Now we're going to come in finally with the fresh herbs. Pick the ones you want. I put about a cup of freshly chopped herbs and I mix that in. And then we're going to come on the top of that with this mixture of eggs, and cheese, and bacon, and fresh herbs. We're going to pop that in the oven, 350 degrees, for about 25-30 minutes. Just kind of watch it. It's going to set up. Don't worry, it's not going to brown too much. You don't want it to brown too much, so watch your time. About 30 minutes at the max, and pull it out. It's ready to go. Let's give this just a little bit more pizzazz. I'm going to take some sour cream, add some chopped chives, and some of this great sriracha hot chili sauce. There you go.
Just look at this part of my vegetable garden. It's filled with all kinds of leafy greens. They're making a pattern. You can see these 4 beds have a design in them. And I used bold leafed vegetables to achieve this result. I have kale, I have some beautiful red cell lettuce, and then down the center spine here is chard. And that's what I want to talk to you about, chard. Look how beautiful it is. But hey, this vegetable is more than a pretty face. This is an outrageous vegetable in that it is so good for you. Chard, in fact, is considered one of the healthiest vegetables available. Who'd have known it? Like other leafy vegetables such as turnips and collard greens, Swiss chard is off the charts when it comes to the amounts of vitamin A, C, and K it contains. Now here's a little aside. Both the leaves and these colorful stems have been studied for their effectiveness in preventing digestive tract cancers. You see, the huge load of additional vitamins and minerals adds up to high marks for this vegetable's contribution to bone, lung, and vision health. And let's not forget about vitamin E. Swiss chard is loaded with vitamin E, which is great as an anti-inflammatory, and it also helps boost better mental health, which I can use plenty of. So you may ask, how do I prepare this beautiful vegetable? Well, there's nothing easier than taking a little olive oil and sauteing it. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Setting the mood for a romantic supper together doesn't have to stress you out. You can make it simple and elegant with just a few elements. You know, sometimes we find ourselves in the doghouse with that special person in our lives and we need to do something to sort of make it up. Maybe you didn't do enough for Valentine's Day, or didn't remember Valentine's Day, or maybe a special day like a birthday or an anniversary. So this idea is really for those guys out there who may have let something slip. And the idea is to just create a beautiful, warm, comfortable table setting it's very romantic for two. So I started with fire in the fireplace. There's nothing like a warm fire to set the mood. And then what I've done is I've covered the table with these little votive candles, and I've used 20 of them, about 10 on this side and about 10 on that side. Now, sometimes you gotta get clever because you don't have a lot of time. So in this case, if you look at the centerpiece, it's a bowl of apples. But these apples really kind of work with the color scheme I've got going on here. I had these green dishes, I had some green apples in the kitchen. I'm using a brown table, and I actually moved a table downstairs and moved some chairs from the kitchen down here to set this up. So I think when you show that kind of effort to that person who's really special in your life, they really appreciate it. Now look a little closer. You'll see that I've taken some brown paper. I've run it across the table in two ways, bisecting in the center. And this is just painter's paper, the kind of paper that they put down on the floor before they paint trim. I've just taken a marker and I've gone around here writing characteristics about that person. That they're funny, they're happy. Over here I wrote, "You're so perfect." And over here, rather than saying, "I'm lucky," I'm going to say, "I'm so lucky." Those little things make a big difference. So just draw all kinds of things on here. I'm doing little hearts. If they're funny sayings that you both share, you might write those down. And what happens is this becomes a little keepsake. It's almost like a card that you give them at the end of the evening. And then you want to make sure that you have a nice bottle of wine, maybe two. And in this case, what I've done is I've taken the same napkin that I had and I just used it to wrap the bottle of wine. Now, to make the evening even more special, if you can prepare the meal, what's great about this table setting is that you can get it set up well ahead of time, and all you really have to do is just light the candles. You don't have to worry about flowers because we use the apples, and they're going to stay fresh for a long time. Let me show you a little remedy for getting this red wine out of a shirt. Just look at that, what a disaster. What you want to do is the first thing is to try to get to it as quickly as possible before it sets up. This approach will work even if it sets up, and it's much better if you can go through here and try to blot out any red wine you can. And in this case, I'm able to get some of it out. You can see here the pink on the paper towel. Now, if you spill red wine on something that needs to be dry cleaned, you need to get it to the dry cleaners. This recipe will work for things that you're going to throw in the washer. Now, the recipe for this is really simple. All you're doing is taking 1 cup of hydrogen peroxide, and you're going to add that to 1 teaspoon of just a mild dishwashing liquid. So here's a teaspoon of the dishwashing liquid here in a bowl. I'm going to add 1 cup of the hydrogen peroxide. Just going to mix that. And then just take a little sponge, completely soak the sponge, about half. You don't want to rub the fabric, you simply want to blot the stain. The reason for this is you don't want to drive the stain deeper into the fibers of the fabric. You also don't want to mess up the sort of finish on the fabric. Just taking a gentle approach like this is all you need. The soap will help release the wine particles from the fiber, and the hydrogen peroxide will, through its effervescence, lift those particles out to the surface. Once you finish blotting, throw it in the washer and wash it in cool water unless the directions on the garment indicate otherwise, and then just let it air dry. Then the garment will be as good as new. I've tried this multiple times and it always works. Give it a try. Now this is going in the washer. There we go. My shirt's as good as new. How would you like to just step outside your kitchen and pick some fresh herbs? Hey, it makes a lot of sense. Have you priced fresh herbs in the grocery store? Hey, if they're just two people living in a household, you can go and buy a packet of herbs. Well, you can't believe the price compared to what it would cost to buy a few plants. If you plant a few plants like this, you can have your favorite herbs right at your fingertips. And the cost, well, it's not insane. You may say, hey, I don't have a lot of space. Grow them in containers. It's really easy. Look, I've got garlic chives here and 2 pots of my favorite thyme. And I have them clustered here with some rosemary and some flowering plants, as well as some blueberries. You group them together, they're easier to care for. So keep this in mind the next time you go through the grocery store and you buy fresh herbs. Believe me, you'll want to plant some. They're right at your fingertips and they're oh so fresh. So let's say you've decided to grow a few of those fresh herbs just outside the kitchen door. They come in very handy. Now let's talk about how one could put those herbs to use. This is a pork tenderloin for 2, which uses some of those fresh herbs, and it's really easy and delicious. Can't wait to show you. Now I'm going to start with 1/4 cup of olive oil. What we're going to do is make a marinade here. And then I'm going to take 2 teaspoons of minced garlic, 2 teaspoons of those little thyme leaves, and some minced rosemary, 2 teaspoons, yet again, and then some flat leaf Italian parsley. What I'm using here are 2 tablespoons. You can see they're finely minced. And then I have 2 teaspoons of kosher salt, and I'll just add to that in the end. Okay, now what you want to do is you want to add this marinade over the pork tenderloin. And you know, I like to let it sit for at least 2 hours, but overnight is even better. So think about this ahead of time. You can leave it in a bowl like this, or you can put the tenderloin in a freezer bag if you like, and just put it in the refrigerator. But what I like to do is make sure that the tenderloin is completely covered in all of this marinade like this. Look at that. It smells really good. Now, this tenderloin, typically they come 2 to a package. This piece of tenderloin is about 1.5 pounds. You can take the other one. You could go ahead and do the same recipe, just double the ingredients, grill them both at the same time, or just pop the other one in the freezer until you're ready to do this again. All right, now, like I said, you're gonna let this marinate, and once you have it marinated, you lay it out like this, and it's ready to go into the oven. You can see all of those herbs, and you can see the olive oil settling in around it. Now the total cook time for this is about 45 minutes. What you want to do is pop it in the oven at 350, preheated oven, cover it with foil, and cook it for about 30 minutes. Then take off the foil, and then cook it for another 12 to 15 minutes until the juices are clear and it begins to brown just a bit. And hey, you have a delicious entree for 2. Just remember, finding a recipe for 2 shouldn't be stressful or difficult. And think about it this way. By preparing a meal at home, you save some money, you can spend some quality time with one another, and just get creative. I'll leave you with a quote from the late Julia Child. "It's so beautifully arranged on the plate, you just know someone's fingers have been all over it." With that, I leave you with good eating and good health. Here, Walter. I know you're eating blackberries. Come here. Come here, you little devil. Walter, come here. Walter. I know you're eating blackberries. Come here, you little devil. Okay, you little jailbird, you're going back to Poultryville.